Hey everyone, Perry here. Just wanted to let you know I'm dropping a couple episodes of a new show that Mason and I put together. It's called The FAIK Files, and it's a 10-part miniseries going through each chapter within my new book, FAIK. It starts off with a dramatization, goes into an interview, and then of course the call to action is, if you love the content, if you believe it's important, please go out and buy the book. I'm only going to drop a couple episodes of this into the feed that you're listening to now. And then after you listen to those couple episodes, if you like the show, if you want to continue, there'll be a new feed that you can go subscribe to so that we're not crossing the streams and putting two different shows into one feed. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the FAIK Files. And if you do, go sign up.
Whispers in the static, she's awake at night. Voices in the data, secrets out of sight.
Hey there, this is Perry Carpenter, and welcome to this deep dive into my new book, FAIK, spelled F-A-I-K, a practical guide to living in a world filled with deepfakes, disinformation, and AI-generated deception. Let's dive in.
Chapter 2.
Whispers from the static.
Breaking news. 2 college students were arrested late last night for using a sophisticated AI tool to generate fake evidence, orchestrating a crime spree that has left the community reeling. According to police reports, the students, identified as 20-year-old Michael Franks and 19-year-old Natalie Hoffman, had been using a new website called Intelligen to create ultra-realistic fake content, including fabricated documents, images, and videos. The pair allegedly used these AI-generated deepfakes, referred to by experts as synthetic media, to frame local teachers and students for crimes ranging from inappropriate relationships to drug trafficking. The fake evidence was so convincing that it led to multiple wrongful arrests and threw legitimate investigations into chaos.
We've never seen anything like it. The level of sophistication and realism in the fabricated evidence was staggering. This shows how powerful AI tools can be in the wrong hands.
The crime spree came to an end when Franks turned himself in to the authorities and provided a full confession. He claimed that what started as a prank quickly escalated into something much more sinister.
At first, it was just about causing some chaos, seeing what we could get away with. But when Professor Jacobs was arrested based on some posts and photos that we created, I just couldn't live with it.
Hoffman, however, showed no remorse when apprehended by police.
It was just a game. It's not my fault people are dumb enough to believe anything they see.
The revelations sent shockwaves through the local college and the wider community. Many are grappling with the implications of a world where the line between truth and fiction can be so easily blurred. Sarah Johnson, a classmate of the accused, had this to say.
It's terrifying. I mean, if they could do this, what's to stop anyone else? But how can anyone know it's real?
Authorities are now scrambling to assess the scope of damage caused by the duo's actions. They are also working with the creators of Intelligen to better understand how the tool can be misused and what safeguards, if any, can be put into place.
This is a wake-up call. It's just the beginning. Pandora's box is open, and we need to adapt.
Local police report that Franks and Hoffman are facing several charges, including falsifying evidence, obstruction of justice, and cybercrime. If convicted, they could be looking at decades behind bars. A stark reminder that in the age of AI, fake content can have very real consequences. This is Megan Foster, reporting for WKPT News. Back to you.
My name is Mason Amadeus. I'm sitting down with Perry Carpenter, author of the new book, FAIK, a practical guide to living in a world of deepfakes, disinformation, and AI-generated deceptions. The story that we just heard, the Whispers from the Static, something like that actually happened, right? It was in January of 2024 as a principal at a school. I think you mentioned that actually in chapter 1, right?
Yeah, so there was a principal in the school that came under fire for some racially divisive remarks that they made. Only it turns out the principal never said any of that, and it was an AI clone of the principal's voice that was created in a kind of a hidden recording type of concept. that sounded like somebody that was in his office while he was having this rant. And it turns out that it was another employee in the school that was setting him up because they were frustrated about their own employment and their relationship with that person.
And that was real. Like that actually happened.
And it went viral online because they knew who to leak it to online that would get frustrated and had all the right connections. So they basically created the bomb, lit the fuse, and put it in the hand of somebody that would throw it in the right direction.
Oh, it is. It's interesting to be chilled by something that will probably become pretty common.
Yeah, I can see lots and lots and lots of people doing this to each other.
Yeah. But chapter 2 isn't specifically focused on that. In this chapter, you went into a lot of history that I thought was really interesting. I didn't realize that the development of artificial intelligence, or machine learning is a more accurate term. I didn't realize that that began in the 50s and 60s. But of course, I forget when Alan Turing was alive.
Right.
The Turing test. Can a robot fool a human, right?
Right. Well, and, the thing with AI is that there has been so much discussion about it for decade upon decade now. But there have been what they term these AI winters, where things just kind of stagnate and there's no progress and people get really down on it. I think the thing that really changed is that we've had these other versions of machine learning and artificial intelligence that have just been statistics prediction machines. Like, they'll surface your next recommendation in your Spotify playlist or whatever. And then we've had other bad versions, like the current version of Siri and, the old Google Assistant and everything else, where you're so frustrated by the results that you get because it mishears you all the time. It doesn't deal with follow-up questions well. It doesn't understand context or anything about your life. And in 2017, all that started to change because of this paper that Google DeepMind put out called Attention is All You Need. And that gave rise to the transformer architecture that gave rise to where we are now with large language models and AI that at times can feel like Star Trek.
Yeah. And I don't want to blow past that because the topic of attention, as a person who struggles with attention, that paper felt very targeted.
Right.
But B, attention.
That's all you need.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, my favorite Adderall. It's all you need. Attention as a concept in machine learning. What is it? Because I feel like that's one of the things that can be described really poorly, but you break it down so concisely.
In general, the attention gets paid to the context that it's given. And one of the things that systems have struggled with for years is if you ever have used, and I'm sure people have played this game before, where they just use the predictive text on their phone. They start with one word and they go to the next, and you end up with this like nonsense that comes out where it has no idea what your intent was. It had no idea what the history of the conversation was. It's just kind of going off a statistical probability of the word to is usually followed by the, which is usually followed by, a percentage of the time, this, which is the highest percentage of the time is this other word. And the bringing of attention on that means that when you say the word to is normally followed by the word the within a specific context, like you're talking about cats, well, then statistically probable might be to the couch or to the litter box or to the food or to the milk or to, those kinds of things. So the words are more related in clusters based on the topic and based on the context, and it's constantly paying attention to the context that it's given.
So it's like if predictive text could just read further back into the conversation, right?
That's really the power of it. And you can every now and then see this like on older models, or if you go to playground.openai.com and start to play around with that, their older model is what's called a completion model, which you and I played with back when Jasper and Jarvis AI was a thing.
Yes, that was a completion model.
Yeah, it was an older version of GPT before the chat was slapped on it as well. And essentially what you would do is you'd feed it a sentence or a part of a sentence or part of a paragraph, and it would just start to like run off with that understanding of the context. And in OpenAI's Playground and a few other places, what you can do is you can turn on the probability markers, and you can play with this thing called temperature to turn up the randomness or turn it down. and you can start to see like how these words are connected probabilistically. And you can start to see like, oh, okay, from a high probability word, and because you added randomness, went to a low probability word. So instead of saying, going to truck, it went to sidewalk. And because it didn't want to go to a next high probability word, like that was like 70% probable, it went to one that's like 30% probable because you said to be more random. A lot of that's hidden to us now whenever we use the products behind this, but that's essentially what's going on. But it's still, even in the 70% probability for one word versus 30% to another, those are probabilities related to the contextual thing that you've started.
Right. In half of all cases, cats will be involved with couches and litter boxes. And in almost zero cases, trucks will be involved with couches and litter boxes. And actually, it was the hiding of those extra parameters that made it so accessible and is the reason that ChatGPT gained a bajillion users in 1 second or whatever. It was like the highest adoption ever, wasn't it?
Highest adoption ever at the time. I think that there's been one app that's surpassed it since then, but I don't remember what it was. But they got to 100 million users in 2 months after they released, I think, November 30th, 2022. So it's been called like the ChatGPT moment, equivalent of like the creation of the web or the iPhone moment that really has shown like the power of what can be wrapped in a certain type of technology.
And it was the interface that made it accessible, and I think was what like blew people away, right?
Exactly.
Because it was something we're all familiar with.
Everybody knows how to use a chat window. Everybody feels intimidated by all these other, parameters and sliders, but you strip it away to just a little box that you can type a question in or type a statement in or type a command in, and all of a sudden everything changes.
Which is, I remember how magical it was the first time I cracked open ChatGPT and I was like, it's talking to me like a person.
Yeah, it did. It felt like all of a sudden you'd stepped into Star Trek after dealing with Siri and all these other models, and then you do something and it's in a lot of ways emulating a human conversation pretty darn well.
There's two shifts that happened in like public opinion around this that I want to talk to you about that are tangential to things you covered in the chapter. And the first one is that I feel like, talked about how human-like AI was getting up until it was just a little too human-like. And suddenly everyone's like, actually, it's not human-like at all. Have you noticed, did you notice that at all?
A little bit. It's interesting because I think it depends on the frame of mind of the person that's talking about it. Some people, especially like in the creative community, are really some people really embrace it because they see it as a tool. They see it as progress. Other people are repelled by it, not only because of the way that it may have been trained or the way it was trained, but by the fact that they'll look at it and they'll say, well, it feels soulless to me. And some people, that's a cognitive bias, I think, because I've seen some really, really good AI-generated stuff. Other people may have just seen bad iterations of those things where somebody put in a prompt, they never refined it, and they just kind of settled with the first output. Because, you use the word, I think it was in the last episode, democratize. Generative models for video, for images, for text, for audio have democratized the creative process quite a bit to where you can kind of suck as somebody that could draw or paint. But now with a few words, you can create something pretty darn good the first time, passably acceptable most of the time.
I would describe myself as someone who kind of sits on the fence between those two lines because I think it's incredible that we have this technology that's able to do that. And on the other hand, my heart breaks that we live in a system where it's going to be used to replace creative work with like low effort generation of soulless art.
It will be the lazy way to get by. At the same time, though, I think for people that embrace it as part of the creative journey for something cool, it's a means to an end faster and with more interesting results if you have the right minds behind it. Think about like if you're doing product design or something, and you would go to an agency and they would create 10 different iterations of like a wireframe of something or a sketch of a new shoe. But that's the purpose of it isn't the wireframes or the sketch of the new shoe. It is to narrow in on an idea that everybody likes so that they can go to the next stage of development. If I can take that 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks and compress that down to like one where you get 1,000 generations and you're like, oh, all those suck, but here's 3 that we like. And now let's iterate on those with a lot of intensity. Well, now you can take what could feel like a necessary evil or just the frustrating part of the process, and you can get to the exciting bit, which is taking the ideas that everybody really likes and starting to flesh those out even more, put like more meat on the bones and think about the manufacturing and everything else. So you can actually shift your cost basis for it too. And it may actually have the potential, if we manage employment and other things right, could have the potential of bringing cost savings to the end consumer as well.
And I think too, like what you touched on with it doing work that people don't really want to do, freeing them up to do the work that they do want to do that is creative. Like that's wonderful. Also, a lot of AI tools that I think are incredible to have now for rotoscoping in video. I think DaVinci's Magic Mask uses deep learning neural networks, and you can click an item, rotoscope, yank the background out of a video instantly instead of tracing it frame by frame arduously.
Yeah, exactly.
The fill you can do in Photoshop to like fill in holes around an image,
like
or
the
something.
Generative fill. Yeah, all that stuff. That's not the work that people wanted to do. That was the frustrating part where they're zooming in on a screen and going pixel by pixel. It is something that they were able to bill for,
right?
But
that's true.
The people that were doing it didn't enjoy it.
And if you do, you still can.
Yeah, you still can, or you can take the effort that you would spend on doing that and you can put it intensely in the further refinement of the thing that you want. It also, maybe it alleviates some of the horrible working conditions that some artists have had in production houses, like big animation studios, to where they're not having to work 20-hour days and deal with all of these random production changes at the last minute where somebody goes, I don't like the whale there. You need to put it somewhere else.
Right.
And there's like, okay, and then all of a sudden it's changed, but they get to, if they're using it well, if they're using it ethically with good intent and they're willing to embrace the technology, I think that they can start to find ways to shift where they're putting their real value, which is the creative vision behind it and the refinement of the thing that comes out.
I feel like it's just going to take a while before the adoption of it is not as controversial is a word I don't want to use because I don't want to be dismissive of the very real concerns about the fact that like a lot of artist art was used without consent in the training of the models, and it can ape styles. And we could get into a whole discussion, do an entire podcast if we wanted about like, is that not how we learn too and are influenced by things? I don't want to delve into that realm because we could go really far into it. But I think something that kind of contributes to a malaise in public opinion, this was the second shift that I was thinking of, is that there's a preponderance of AI slop covering the internet. There's a website, AppSumo, where you can go to purchase apps that are in development at like a discounted price or get a lifetime subscription for a discount. And almost all of them are about filling the internet with new websites of content that you didn't have to do work for. And like most AI apps are just shovelware interfaces on top of ChatGPT. It makes me a little bit hesitant to be as optimistic. Do you share any of those sort of concerns? Or do you think that'll die down or?
So I do think that the internet is going to get filled with AI created sludge because there's always a content vacuum. If you're trying to generate leads for your business or attention for your band or whatever, you're wanting to put out stuff over and over and over again to try to get the algorithm on your side.
Attention.
People to
all you
pay
need.
attention. It's all you need, yeah. Even for real people.
Yeah.
So I do think that because of the fact that people can start to get stuff that's halfway readable, halfway decent out there, there's just going to be more and more of that. If I were to take the darker turn on it, then I would say if you can do that for your band or for your company, you could also do that for your shady cause, for your scam, for your political or ideological thing that may be nefarious, or your thing where you're wanting to poke society and drive people into more polarized groups.
Yeah, the scale of that, like botnets and astroturfing and those sorts of things, where a large scale, what can look like a groundswell or just a lot of focused attention, now can be individualized and interactable, like a phishing email that can reply back to you contextually understanding what you say and things like that. But again, it's a tool. We've talked about good uses, bad uses. There, you mentioned in this chapter that there are research and medical uses, that AI is working on new drugs and compounds and understanding things like that too.
Yeah, and it just gets better too. So OpenAI just released their new O1 model, not to be confused with 4.0, but their O1 model is their reasoning model that is not just a forward-only next token predictor. It does like a chain of thought, where like a tree of thought, where it works more like we do. So you give it a complex problem, and it goes off and goes, let me think about it. It could be this, but then it could also be this. But if it's this and maybe some of this, it could also be this other thing. And so it really starts to like go through all these different processes to come at a response. And so when you get to that level of reasoning, that's where you can start to have things like people coming up with new ways of solving problems that maybe you or I wouldn't think about. And maybe it's not that the computer comes back in 20 or 30 seconds or a minute like it does now on that reasoning model, but you send it to go off and think for a month about it. And it traces hundreds of thousands or millions of possibilities, and then comes back with the one thing that everybody else would have gotten frustrated and given up with by that time.
The possibility for research and automating tedium in a way that would be unprecedented is really powerful. And yet, I don't have it on my phone. I can't ask it to make me an appointment. So I'm personally frustrated by it still. We're close though, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. Google actually created that several years ago and demoed it. They just never like fully put it out.
Oh, really? Was it because of like privacy concerns accessing users' info?
It was, people were creeped out by the fact that a bot was calling them, and it was imitating a person. And I think that there were also some other concerns about how it could be tricked or weaponized. But we've kind of hit the genie's out of the bottle at this point, and it's not just Google or Facebook or Meta or Anthropic or 11 Labs or anybody else doing it. There's so many other models out there that the arms race is, let me create the better one, and then also try to put some kind of trust and safety boundary in it that will limit some of those negative possibilities. And then there's also just society starting to figure out like
how to deal,
that
right?
this is going to happen no matter what.
Yeah. I think this would be a good question to end on. You lay out in this chapter a couple of different types of AI, like a retrieval augmented generation model, or my favorite one was, it wasn't a bucket of experts. It was like a MOE.
Oh, yeah. A mixture of experts.
Yes.
So basically smaller models that each focus on certain things that they are experts at, little subject matter expert models that are out there that are kind of governed by another model that's then distributes it. And then you get the best of all of those things in a way that is computationally feasible, rather than this monolith that's out there that just churns and is not as good on any one thing, but it is kind of the least common denominator for everybody.
I think that's really interesting, because like you would be using several GPTs, right? Pre-trained smaller models that are
Yep.
I'm constantly interested in the parallels we can draw to human organization in terms of the way that interacting with it uses natural language, and then also how you can picture this as like a group of people that are skilled at different things. Ask Bob, he's the audio guy, he's the audio GPT.
Exactly. And that's the way that a lot of these are going to go, especially as they turn into what are being called agents. So you'll have several different agents that can go off and make decisions for you, go off and do things like book your hotel or get a car for you or project out like the calendar appointments that you need for a month, or deal with your bank account stuff. And they'll just be thousands upon thousands upon thousands of those out there doing people's biddings, but they'll all be specialized and they'll all be tied to other things, which also means they'll also be like exploitable and weaponizable, and we'll make mistakes and everything else.
And I mean, and like you mentioned in this chapter as well, the computational resources are currently still pretty hefty. Like you need to have significant hardware to run these. But that is changing too. So we're not far from things changing drastically again, huh?
Yeah, smaller models mean that they're less computationally intensive. And I mean, you're already seeing this in some of the other models that come out, like GPT-4 has the mini version of it. So it's a smaller model that's less computationally intensive. GPT-01 from OpenAI has an O1 mini or a smaller version of that with it. Same thing with Anthropic's Claude. They have like 3 different versions of 3.0, Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. And Haiku's like the really, really small one. Sonnet's kind of the mid-level reasoner. And then Opus is the big one. All different computational models, all different cost models as well.
So there is not an AI. We are talking about a bunch of different models, different organizations of models.
And they all act and reason a little bit differently too. So like for the life of me, Google Gemini, as smart as the folks at DeepMind are that really work on that and put it together, I cannot get it to give me good outputs.
Really?
Google Gemini, for me, for some reason, I always come away from it, even though it's not. So I'll preface it by saying this. I always come away from it thinking it's trash.
Really? I haven't messed
the same
with it.
prompts that do amazing things for me in ChatGPT or Claude fundamentally fail on Google Gemini.
Interesting.
And so I know it's a me problem. It has to be, because the folks that put that together are not stupid. And it has tons and tons of data and computational resources. I mean, Google is in a position to do this better than anybody else if they wanted to. For me, it just doesn't work well.
That's interesting. The tools are different.
Yeah.
And that's actually the next chapter, the mindset and tools of a digital manipulator, which I can't wait to get into, because talking about some of the mindset things behind the people who are creating these deceptions, how people who would be doing this think and approach the world. I want to ask you some questions about your mentalism days and
cool,
how you've gotten some insights from there. So we have that to look forward to for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll continue talking about it here. And well, I guess here is the important part for people listening right now.
Oh, and on bookshelves if you want to buy a book.
On bookshelves. Yes, I have my pre-order copy coming. Oh, also, you were sending me a pre-author copy, so I'm going to have 2 copies.
Yeah, just don't cancel the pre-order.
No, don't worry. Oh, man, could you imagine?
Calculation.